So in the demo today, we're going to show you how we can make Veeam talk to Backblaze B2 storage. So something they cannot get along without the VTL layer between them. And we just wanted to show how we can interface these two. So we've got our StarWind VTL configured in this server. And we'll just log in and configure the virtual tape library. Just call it VTL. We'll be emulating a 96-bay library, and we'll create a new target for it.
So what level of tape are you emulating now? LTO 6 or something?
LTO 5 and
LTO 5?
Yeah. Reality is, in the backend, we can just add support for different tapes as they grow. But we still enjoy the luxury of sizing our tapes according to what we have actually written. So we can spawn as many as we like, and the granularity can be like one tape equals one database, one tape equals one virtual machine. So even when you want to backseed the data from the cloud, you don't need to get the entire big tape with all your infrastructure. You can just get what you need, and you can set up the same thing on the, let's say on Veeam side, you just set it up differently.
Right.
So you get the granularity of, let's say, even file level with the tape. Okay, so we've got our tape ready, and now we configure the cloud replication. There are two options here right now. We support Amazon S3 and Glacier. There is Backblaze B2, and we're about to launch the Azure and plain NFS support for it as well as S3 compatible storage, which is right now not in the graphical user interface, but let's say if we're talking about Hitachi Vantara, SAP, HDST, object storage arrays, or let's say Fujitsu Eternos, these will all be able to work with StarWind VTL. And we just need the account ID and the application key from Backblaze. So we'll log into our Backblaze account, fetch that data, and basically bind the on-premises virtual tape with the bucket on the object storage side.
So, I mean, what about the GDPR kinds of constraints where the data supposed to go outside of Europe and things of that nature? Do you support those sorts of constraints at some level?
Yeah, so basically, if we talk about, let's say, Backblaze, obviously, I think the data centers are in state, so GDPR is not going to be fulfilled. I think where it's going right now, it's interesting because my girlfriend is like exploring GDPR deeply right now because they work a lot with data and they have to adhere to all these new rules. And they're running into a situation where they have certified vendors to provide services are guaranteed within a certain geographical region. And by, I think, June, they will start these certifications. And eventually it will be like you have to keep your data on a GDPR certified location. So let's say government cloud, not the government, the German region of Azure would be one of the examples of a region I anticipate will get this certification really fast. And then you have all the local MSPs, you have all the local smaller cloud storage providers that can get it. And this way, simplify it for organizations to just be compliant. Okay, so we defined to keep all the versions, and now we'll get the application key.
Write this down.
So it's recorded.
No, I can't see it.
Okay, and so now we come to the interesting phase where we set up the retention policies for our tapes. Right now with Backblaze, there is no cold tier and hot tier, and it's all just one cloud storage. So we first set up how we replicate. So let's say the local tape job finished, and then we either keep that backup on site for a certain amount of days, or we replicate it immediately, or we never replicate it. So it's all defined per library. You can have libraries which never go anywhere, and you can have libraries which will just push the data to the cloud and never keep a local data copy. Another thing to the GDPR thing, which gives you the flexibility. So there is data you can move away. So like,
So you have sort of a cache for the object store on
it's
your
not really cache.
StarWind appliance.
It's really a storage. So the StarWind appliance will actually store the local tape. So unlike, let's say, Amazon Gateway would be the example of how it caches and then pushes to the S3 and Glacier, StarWind actually keeps the local data copy. So you can back your virtual tape with SSDs and have instant restores from tape, which is in reality Flash. So we'll select replicate immediately, and we'll keep the local copy for about 7 days. And that value can be changed later.
So would you use the StarWind appliance as your primary copy of the backup data? Or you're not using the VTL as a secondary, backing up to some other disk and then pushing it to the VTL? You're saying that the VTL, in this case the VTL, because you have the local SSDs, that would be your primary backup?
Yeah, that can be another situation. So the VTL appliance itself can have, you can define storage that is backed. There is exported as virtual tape, and then storage, which is just, let's say, an NFS share, which Veeam will just use as the local repository to do backups, quick restores like sandbox stuff, and other things. And then these jobs they do on the SSD part and then be replicated to VTL. So you just define how you use that storage. StarWind gives you the flexibility to carve it out in different pieces.
And so you control the retention on the StarWind device. Do you control the retention on the, let's say, Backblaze back storage version of that? I mean, do you go through the process when the retention is elapsed on the StarWind device? Do you go out and delete the object storage as well, or not?
Yeah. So in object storage, on Backblaze, there was this additional parameter to keep all the versions.
Okay, so you could have two different retention periods for each of the
Correct.
solutions.
Right, so we'll just connect the virtual tape library here over iSCSI. Still works the same old way, except we got newer iSCSI initiator, newer iSCSI stack part on our end, so it's much faster, luckily.
Sorry, this is the iSCSI connection to your appliance
To
from our backup server?
Yeah.
Okay.
I always had trouble configuring iSCSI for some reason. It's never this simple.
Only in the Windows.
Yeah. Oh, it's because it's Windows?
It's a Veeam
Mac
box,
is
so
the
it
problem?
runs on Windows.
Landline.
iSCSI CLI, yeah, but it doesn't work well for demos.
I'm with you.
Yeah, and we've got our tape library right here, so we can add it to Veeam Backup and Replication now.
So it shows up as an HP, I'm sorry, it shows up in an HP.
Yeah, it emulates HP, StoreEver, or AddictScalar, and there are two other libraries we're working on just to explore the other options. But for now, these appear to be the most widespread. So wherever you present yourself as an HP, every backup application is like, okay, I can work with you. Right, so we're adding the tape server, just the the default settings. Yep. Okay, so we're done. It's now run a quick inventory of the tapes, and then we can back up a virtual machine there.
So is the StarWind actually representing the tapes as object storage within its appliance as well? Or no?
No.
So it's just a
I mean,
block?
in a way that like we still have the like file which has the metadata and file which has the actual data. So it's like easily digestible, but we still on our side we still see it as files.
I have a question. So Veeam has the capability of taking a copy from primary backup on its own NFS and sending it directly to cloud itself.
Right, but it can do it to AWS, and right now they cannot do it to, as far as I remember, no Azure, no Google Cloud, and no Backblaze.
But they're working on it. They're working on it. Well, that's they tell me.
So right, yeah. So right now we have a situation where customers approach us and ask, like, guys, can you work with this backup and this backup? And we ended up just working with Backblaze to develop a joint solution. And I think Backblaze were also working with Veeam to figure out what are the ATAs on a solution like this. And one more thing is that with virtual tape, you kind of have a different treat to how you store your backups. And with VTL, what we eventually want to do is not just a single cloud, but a multi-cloud. So not just Backblaze or AWS. It's going to be, let's say, primary copy is going to be S3, and then one more for archival is going to be on some new cloud storage that appears to be like 5 times cheaper than any of the existing ones. So the idea we're exploring is that at some point, keeping your eggs in one basket, one cloud storage provider is not going to cut it. So
I totally don't agree with. I totally do agree with that. But Veeam is only one solution. There are a lot of other solutions out there that are already doing. I guess this is Veeam specific. Is that the idea? Is that people who want to keep Veeam around?
We keep Veeam around, but also other providers like TSM. Right now, as far as I know, vanilla TSM will work with IBM, but the other cloud providers are kind of on the second grade of, second priority of development. Whereas we present an HP library, so any backup solution can work with it. This example is Veeam. It can be anything, let's say, Commvault.
No.
So when the and I'll call it the tape is expired on your solution, and you want to go back to the object storage because it's still not expired, how does that work? I mean,
I'll show you in just a few moments.
he's typing awful fast. He did so, yeah.
Okay, so we do one virtual machine backup job, and then we reapply this job to tape. And then we'll get to your question. We'll show the
So that backup job is going to the StarWind device?
This one is going to the default backup repository right now, so the local storage on Veeam, and then we do one on VTL. So in this particular demo, it could be StarWind 1 and 2.
So are you deduplicating the data at all at your level?
At our level,
or compressing it?
Yeah, so depending on what you set up on your backup application level, we can enable offline deduplication for it or don't do it. But typically, compression is done on the backup end.
So the backup app itself is doing the compression, and you're just accepting a compressed stream. As far as deduplication, is it the backup that's doing the deduplication, or are you guys doing it?
There are ways to do it. So let's say Veeam does have deduplication, but StarWind also has deduplication.
Okay.
So depending on how user configures it, we can either just do global dedupe in our pool, or we will just accept the fact that the tapes coming to us are already deduplicated. I mean, there is a small chance we can deduplicate across them, but not much.
Do you guys support encryption at your level?
under our level. So on the between ourselves and the
S3.
S3.
So encryption of the data in flight, or actual encryption of the data being sent to?
Data at rest.
Being sent to, yeah.
Okay.
And there is also an option. So we have several customers who wanted, well, I mean, didn't want, they demanded that they need to use their own encryption module. And there is also an option to insert a third-party encryption module.
Huh.
So there are like two big banking institutions who wanted to do that. Right. So we finished our tape backup while we were talking. And right now you see it's uploading to Backblaze. And once it's uploaded, it will stay on premises for 7 days, just in case we want to restore it faster. And here we can sign into Backblaze and actually see the tapes we pushed from the StarWind VTL appliance.
I have a question. I mean, I see a use case for this in customers that have, we'll call it legacy, very large tape infrastructures, right? Who they've been using, say they've been using TSM forever. You brought up TSM, so you kind of got me going here.
I mean, that you actually pictured the big customers.
The huge customers that have literally petabytes, exabytes of tape that are out there that they can't get rid of, but they don't want to maintain it, and there's a risk to it. So I would see that, you know, if they wanted to use their backup solution to somehow ingest those tapes, copy them onto your tapes, which are actually not taped, but go up to the cloud and get stored in Glacier, let's say, and that way it could eliminate, you know, exfiltration of those tapes. And I think that would be a great use case.
I mean, it's already one of the big ones.
That's probably that. I would say if I was going to talk to customers about that, that would be the primary use case I thought. I think that would be a value because that's a problem
Tape
that isn't
migration
getting
to the
solved.
cloud kind of thing.
Well, it's just, you know, I've got one of the largest pharmaceuticals in the world, and these guys have just enormous amount of tapes, and with an infinite retention, right? And these tapes are not going to be readable in who knows how long. You know, you have the 100-year problem, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So to take those tapes and ingest them, you know, using the native tool, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got to make sure you archive that tool, but I can just get the media out of the way, and you put it on Glacier. And that way, it's just done, and you can get rid of all those tapes in the rooms and the libraries.
Start paying through the nose for that, of course.
And you got to pay a lot. You got to have the libraries, and then
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I think that's a great use case. I think that's a better use case than anything you've come up with.
Yeah, so I mean, the problem with our typical big customer you pictured is they don't really like to be referenced, and they don't really like to use their.
So in other words, you're already you're dealing with X customer in that kind of a use case already.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So we have two of those customers, and one is a big banking institution, and one is in the oil and gas industry.
Okay.
And
I may have one for you in the pharmaceutical industry. We'll talk.
Appreciate it. And there is one more thing for handling lots of tapes that VTL takes out of the way. So eventually, you get into a situation where you need to restore some data, and you take an LTO 3 or 2, and you realize that not only you need to restore it, but you also need all the infrastructure to read it.
Oh, yeah.
You need the old machine, which still has the drivers for the old library and stuff like
You
that.
only have two levels. You only have 2 levels of compatibility with LTO.
Yeah.
So the most recent generation, it entirely relies on the better infrared, you know, the tape stuff. So the 2-level compatibility is broken. So which means you might have your tape and it might be in a good shape, and what you'll have, you have to go eBay and, you know, search for some old and still functional equipment just to restore from this tape. So having just what Max just told, having the medium is not enough. You have to have the whole thing, and that's you know, the biggest issue about that.
Yeah.
Because tapes are reliable, but tape equipment, tape drives are not.
How integrated is the VTL solution with the virtual SAN solution? Are they separate products without?
You can manage them through the same user interface. So the one we previously showed was the StarWind web interface, and it just appears as another target. So you can have your primary storage devices and then a VTL device.
Beyond management itself, so if you have a StarWind virtual SAN solution, can you natively back up from there to S3, for example, using your VTL, or do you need a separate appliance?
No, so we can, but it's still from the application side, because we like if StarWind Virtual SAN presents storage, it's just blocks. So if we just try to back up from the, let's say, from the storage side and not from the virtual machine side, we don't have that consistency.
Right. Okay.
I can handle this also. So you kind of, predicted the future a little bit for us. Because what we're doing right now, we are at this point, we are disconnecting our virtual SAN front end from the back end, and we are working and pretty actively working. So it's definitely we're talking about like months at best. We'll be having the ability to use S3 compatible storage as one of the slowest tier for the StarWind virtual SAN, which means that we'll keep we'll use dynamic memory and persistent memory as a level 1 cache and some flash memory either the cache or as a primary storage, and the coldest tier will be object storage with the S3 API or the one that natively exposed by Ceph as a coldest tier, but there will be no tape with this one. So,
is there any additional data integrity that you provide for tape data sets that are recorded on your system, so that you have some sort of, I'll call it end-to-end data integrity kind of thing? So you're effectively accepting backup data, and some of this tape data has got to be 10, 15, 20 years old, and they're going to maintain it for another 10, 15, 20 years on S3, let's say, or something like that, or Glacier. Are you providing any sort of data integrity checking beyond the normal?
There's a hash summing. There's a hash summing on the data, so we do check the integrity. The problem is, if, like what you told, if the content on the tape is already broken, if already damaged.
Nothing you can do about that.
Yes, we can't do not much about it.
I'm more worried about once the data is on your system, do you provide any
yes.
erasure coding on top of that?
Absolutely.
Do you provide
Absolutely.
any additional data integrity checking to make sure that you don't lose it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we keep the files. With our VTL, the primary backend storage is just the file system. So what we do, we enable the aggressive hash summing on it, which is available with, let's say, with Microsoft ReFS. And if something goes wrong, with the data, then we absolutely know about it.
The challenge, if you look at a tape, right, it's almost a self-defining data structure. It's got, volume labels, it's got information labels between every file, it's got a lot of information in that data stream. And as you're moving data, pure data, some of that stuff gets stripped out from the tape, as being read to what's being written to the back end. So how are you maintaining that sort of self-defining structure in the object store? Buckets and objects.
At this point, we do not get into what's actually written on the tape. So we do not traverse back the structure, the file tree on it, and so on. So we deal with just raw blocks from the tape, which is 64 to bigger one-siders. And depending on the configuration, these blocks are mapped to objects on object storage. So we are not traversing the content.
Given your target market as well, especially SMB, and corporate robo sites, which are prime candidates for cloud migrations.
Yes.
Given obvious reasons, would it make sense for you to even consider using that VTL as a way of facilitating backend migration to the cloud as well?
In some sort, yes. But the VTL, that's that at this point, this is what's called the last resort, which means that still first level backup are more efficient if it's been done on the block storage or on the files, for a very simple reason. If you're backing up, for example, if you have a production virtual machine and you're backing up it on the disk, then you can be easily sandbox it. If it's backed up to the tape, there is no easy way to run virtual machines on VMware and Microsoft from virtual tape. So this one has to be, before doing a sandbox, it has to be copied, restored from the tape.
Which you can provide as a conversion.
Absolutely, absolutely. But it adds at least 2 more extra steps, and that's why. That's why first level backup, it's still better to maintain right on the disks. Yes, sir.
Question: Are you guys deduping in the back end to the cloud?
We do not, we do duplicating on our location, but the data that's sent to public cloud, it is not deduplicated.
Here's why I ask, because a lot of the tapes, I'm thinking like the use case that we're talking about, right? I probably have 1,500 full backups of the same stuff,
Okay.
right? And to ask the customer to pay 1,500x for a piece of data that they're staring out there might be an impediment.
It sounds like a very, exciting opportunity, but in reality, is the initial. Nobody's going to seed all his information initially, using the uplink to a public cloud provider. So what he'll do, he'll just, convert these tapes into images, and he'll seed them using the physical disk. That's why it's not that much important. Only the incremental data will be sent from on-site facilities to public cloud. And for these ones, the deduplication from point to point seems to be a little bit less important.
No, I'm just not talking about deduping your appliance. I'm talking about dedupe when you go up to the cloud.
That's what I'm saying. So initial seed will be, will be sent on the disk or on the, huge amount of the flash and so on. Nobody's going to hit the wire, with the petabytes of data. That's too slow and too expensive.
Well, you could snowball it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'm
Sorry
just
if
saying how much they pay for it when they have it there.
Yeah.
I don't
So
care about
it might be on the roadmap, but at this point, we do not see any requests from the customers to, to do it. And also,
They're saying,
we're kind of breaking a little bit the. If we see the, if we see the raw data to public cloud, and also if we do, if we deliver increments which are also raw, then public cloud or whatever facility is running there, it might be the object storage, on-site object storage or whatever, they have a chance to deduplicate it. But if we had already did some kind of the data change, like we had encrypted it on our side, or we had deduplicated it, then the backend storage cannot really effectively deal with this data.
Oh, right, I get that,
Deduplicate,
yeah. I was just thinking if there was, just from a logical perspective, if I got 1,500 copies of more or less the same stuff that doesn't change, maybe 1% less, it's, it's a great value from a customer perspective. It would pay for your solution within a month or two of the first cloud bill, right?
Right. Yeah. So again, the biggest question is how to combine dedupe and secure offload.
You have to do it before you get
because
there. And manage
eventually
metadata. I get
you
that.
want your data to get out of your data center encrypted. But if it goes out encrypted, there is no way the receiver.
Yeah, you'd have to manage the metadata yourself.
Yeah, so it has to be
Not easy.
treated in a different way, like you combine a certain set of verified backups, then deduplicate them and send them encrypted. This way you can achieve what you mentioned might be a request for your customer.
So that's a very interesting scenario to think about, and eventually we'll be, facing this issue, but not yet.
So back to the local storage on the appliance. So you're emulating LTO5 tapes? How big is an LTO5?
It is not exactly like that, because that's just a physical standard everybody understands. So it's not related to the size of the tape.
Yeah, no, okay, fair
So
enough.
it's pretty much unlimited. It's LTO5 with unlimited, unlimited tape size.
Yeah.
This kind of backup.
No, I was trying to determine how you.
How much backup can you actually store?
Yeah, how much you could actually have locally in that cache layer, like that you didn't want to call it a cache, but
No, it's not.
It's persistent storage, so
Yeah.
it's not like it. You can set it to act as cache, but then you can set it to just indefinitely be there, and also it's like
so how does
it's
that?
stored on disk. So
If you were ingesting a large amount of tape, like you had mentioned, like if you were bringing in an archive, you're going to say, keep it there for 7 days, but you're not going to be able to actually keep all that data locally, right?
Okay, so we have a strict focus on the SMBs and robos, which means that typically we have a limitation, not a limitation, but like reasonable limitation of the working set customers are dealing with. So what you're talking right now is a 100% enterprise issue, because they deal.
But I actually see this as being more beneficial to enterprises that have legacy backup solutions,
Correct.
rather than SMBs, where like if they're already using Veeam, if it's an SMB backing up a virtual environment, they're already using Veeam. If they're interested in going to the cloud, there are other ways native to Veeam to do that. If you wanted to use Backblaze, this is obviously a way to do that. But I see this as being more like Glenn's example of leveraging legacy TSM or some other backup solution to get that data off of tape.
Okay.
Right.
So
Not that
no, this is absolutely correct. So how it usually works at the launch, that's not technical, but that's we're going to now right now to a little bit kind of the business way of the way things works. You focus on some particular customer group, you have 100% control of. In our case, it's not like our SMB customers want VTL. They do not really know this wording.
Yeah.
They don't really understand what's going on. They don't,
Right.
but they don't care. So what they just, when they're buying from us, they're ticking the box, okay, so we need backup from you. And we're selling them VTL without even telling them what to do. Then we get, this technology, polish it, mature it, and so on. And then eventually, when it gets overgrown, this particular group, we can go to the enterprise. Because being a comparably small company, if we'll just go and target like super enterprise, like Fortune 500 companies, there are very low chances we're going to sell anything. We've seen things like this exactly with our company before. It might be a very good product, it might be a very good niche, it might be like 100% fit, everything is okay, but big guys are not buying from the small guys, period. It's not going to happen. So when we'll make sure with saying,
You guys need a partner. You
That-
need a partner.
Yeah.
You need a partner that can get you into the
Yeah. It's a typical American response. We need to hire a guy. Like, sure.
No, but it's, I mean, most of us have worked for channel partners. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, you can't,
Absolutely.
it's not like even EMC can go into every single enterprise or business by themselves.
It's a good idea, but it's more of like, it's point in a direction, but it's not, I mean, you cannot chop it into infinite amount of steps and see, okay, so this is, we're going to do A, B, and C. It's like, let's try to find a partner, okay. We'll try. So, and going back to the answer, then technology will mature enough and will make sure that the single or multiple or reasonably sized local appliances are running out of the local capacities because the time is ticking and the capacity of low spinning disk is going up and up and up and up, and that's no problem to feed petabytes of data right now in like 2 or 3 2U chassis. That's no problem. And when we'll see that things is not going really well, what we'll do, we'll just provide on-site object storage, and our VTL will be instead of dealing with the tapes, instead of placing virtual tapes on the file system or on the block level, we'll be dealing with object storage transparently right on the site. Then what we'll have a couple of gateway nodes, physical or virtual, doesn't matter at this point, and we'll have object storage on site, and then we'll have an object storage off site, and then we'll be able to scale local on-site storage absolutely infinitely, just throwing in more nodes, and that will be the way to deal with the over the time increase of the capacity. We have to deal right on site. So that's already on the roadmap, what we're saying.
So we got our files available here. So even in case we lose the entire on-site infrastructure, we can still reconnect any new VTL appliance or VTL, let's say, running in the cloud to fetch this data back and restore the virtual machines. Because backing up the entire infrastructure doesn't make sense. We just back up the virtual machines, and then there are solutions that allow us to restore the infrastructure itself within minutes. Now, I mentioned it's kept locally for 7 days, but then if we reconfigure it, let's say we decided that we don't want these local copies sitting there for 7 days, I would just select delete them immediately, and what it will do, all the local copies will be instantly removed, and unless those are not replicated, there will be a lot of free space on the appliance. So only those that did not replicate yet will stay there, and everything else right now is in the cloud.
So what do you think the throughput of your appliances to local storage? I mean,
Typically, we
a
see
gigabyte a second, or
we see the network link being a bottleneck right now. So typically,
so
one gig,
10 gig or 25
yeah, so
gig or 40
10
gig?
gig is a good link for this purpose. And I think as we're going further with 25 and 50 gig advancements. I think with bigger appliances, 25 gig will going to be new standard.
And so you would have 2 connections to your appliance, is that?
Of course, redundant, all the way.
So you're effectively doing 1 to 2 gigabytes per second to the appliance.
Something like 1. Yeah, so 1.1 is the maximum I actually got out of a 10
Across
gig
a
link.
single link.
I mean, there is one company that actually asked, can you do the same tag and put NVMe in the backend? But we're still negotiating why exactly they need that kind of performance with this kind of technology.
Because they can.
Yes. Right. So we're now initiating a restore. So we inventory our library. The tape gets fetched back from Backblaze, and we can now run a restore just as if we're using a regular tape library. Yep. And we go to restore process. I'll just fast forward it because I think everyone knows what a restore process looks like.